What is the craziest thing your DM let you do? I've commented it before, and it's still going on too. In a campaign I'm a warlock in, we are currently in a decently tough dungeon in a mountain cavern. So there is a lot of ice, and is also giant themed, so a lot about the lore of the giants are in this dungeon. During this dungeon, DM hinted that we may face something that another player jokingly asked was in a dungeon during one of their first sessions of the campaign, so around level 1. At the time, DM responded, "Oh, you'll face one soon." We're now level 9, and DM is hinting to that moment. We couldn't recall what, so we were kind of on edge in this dungeon. Around the halfway point, we find a secret tunnel that we'd have to crawl through. Most of us crawl in, and see just a singular chest in the middle of this secret little cave along with dead enemies that we've been facing. Well, it was a mimic. That's what the player kept asking around level 1, and this one mimic was meant to be for a party of level 6, this is supposed to be one of the easier dungeons. Mimic rolled last for initiative, and not even halfway through the round we got it to less than 10 horsepower. Especially when I used Eldritch Blast plus the Repelling Blast invocation. Mimic used a legendary action too, Beg for Mercy. It revealed its real mimic self that wasn't its chest form, and was begging for life. The rest of the round was everyone basically holding their actions if the mimic tried anything. It didn't, it was genuinely begging for its life. The bard in our party looked at the mimic, and decided to give it pity and heal it. As it clearly wasn't going to mess with us now. After a conversation with the mimic and the bard, the mimic with an INT of 5 labeled the bard, and everyone, as not food and as a thanks, gave the bard a random magic item. DM rolled on a D100 table. We left the little cave and the mimic alone, bard promising to give him food if we see anything. Next room was fighting a statue of a giant warrior, which downed my warlock and nearly downed others. We got the statue to low enough HP when I used Thunderstep after I got saved by the bard. This was also near the entrance of the room where the mimic, that we didn't realize, was watching us fight. When he saw the bard in danger, the mimic, at a little over 10 to 20 horsepower thanks to the bard's cure wounds earlier, successfully snuck up to the statue to get advantage on hitting it. It hit with both attacks, which was enough to finish this tough statue fight. So now, the mimic has been following us, especially behind the bard, as we go through this dungeon, and has been helping us. Next session will have us start going into the final boss room, and the mimic is joining us? This isn't the first time in this campaign too when we've gotten an unexpected ally from an enemy while in a dungeon. It's hilarious too, cause whenever it happens, these unexpected allies are somehow crazy good in combat. Even if the enemy is lower leveled than us, it will roll crits and hit every time it's their turn. We'd encroached on a hag's hidden lair, and found a demi-plane which led to a small farm tended by a pixie. Turns out the henhouse housed a hen who was capable of laying chaos eggs, an egg that released a wild magic surge from a custom list upon breaking. The bard, that is to say, Jack, of giant killing fame, you may have heard of him, used a filter of love and some basic chicanery to collect all the eggs, like 17 or so, and sneak off with them. During our climactic, campaign ending, final battle against the eldritch horror threatening this realm, Jack, set all of his remaining eggs into a bigby's hand and delivered them straight to the creature's largest mouth. Not an instant kill, but the concurrent surges knocked the creature down below 25% health in round 1. End game. I played a Eagle Totem Barbarian heavily flavored as Native American. The world spirit was killed and the soul was captured by an evil sorceress with the help of a prince of the abyss, Frazerblue. Her plan was to siphon the power into her husband to make him a living god she controlled. Fraze was going to siphon it to merge his plane with the material one. At the final battle, we destroyed the catalyst of the energy. This would have caused a massive explosion ripping reality, however the wizard cast wish, and I became the new conduit for the power. My physical form was destroyed but I became the new spirit of the world. Our warlock joined my hand, and he became a dimensional blade that is now my avatar's weapon. This is going to be kind of long but one of my favorite things. We had a side quest where a bunch of werewolves were attacking a dwarven silver mine. The silver mine was producing silver for the minting of coins, etc. We were tasked to clear out the werewolves in the mine for money. When they arrived to clear out the werewolves who were holding the dwarfs hostage, we quickly realized that the WWs were attacking them as a way to defend themselves, not out of spite. After speaking with the dwarves, we ended up finding out they were very greedy and evil, wanting to push out the werewolves out of their home to turn it into another mining area. The werewolves were being slaughtered by the dwarves with silver weapons, men, women and children. During this side quest all the male WWs made the counterattack in order to buy time for the women and children to escape. In reality we were holding up the male WW fighters so the dwarves could march down and slaughter the women and children. When we were talked down and now aligned with the WWs we confronted the dwarves, but they were gone. We tracked them to the WW village and saw the destruction and they were laughing about the whole thing over their dead bodies. Needless to say, we brought them to justice. Now for the question from the post. We have a homebrew system in our campaign called prayer points. It puts relevance in religion in our game. Basically, if you pray you get a point. Max 3 points. Spending 1 and 2 points can do various things, but 3 points allows us to use divine intervention. We asked our DM if we could all use our prayer points to resurrect all the dead women and children slaughtered by the dwarven miners. His decision was that we could add +10 to number needed on top of our current level, like divine intervention says. So, there are 4 of us, and we were at level 5, so we needed a 1 to 45 on the D100. We got it and was able to burn all our prayer points as a one-time thing to resurrect this village. It was awesome. TLDR, we got to resurrect an entire werewolf village that was slaughtered. The other day I made a post that fighting styles should be better. Like letting protection and intercept be used on yourself. Everyone told me that would be too broken. I fucking hate this player base. Marshall cast a gap. It's such a problem. Maybe let them have an active use for shields, maybe dodge could be a free bonus action for monks, maybe marshals should get more speed buffs. Everyone, were careful, you'll break the game. Casters, I'd like to turn the beg into a newt, I'd like to incapacitate this entire room, I'd like my god to pull the beg's pants down and lay him prone before me. Or even just I'd like 25 temporary hit points and passively deal 50 damage to the next creature who multi-attacks me, taking nearly no damage and using action economy I spent 6 hours ago when we were finishing up our drinks at the tavern. What isn't the reason marshals suck? It's all these players that think marshals being good is for weebs, and that's not my fantasy. The fact that master is tested well is a travesty. It's not good enough. We set off a landslide using TNT made with an all-purpose tool converted into alchemist's supplies. The resulting change in landscape diverted the river Styx, causing it to no longer flow into the Hells but rather into the Feywild. Exactly as planned. What? I need to know much more. Why? And what were the repercussions? 2 factions we didn't like were fighting over the souls in the river, and we needed a distraction. There were no direct repercussions to the party or our goals. The fairies weren't happy about the situation, but they also didn't know it was us. Nobody does. We were also able to put the river back where we found it eventually. Made me a door shield. I was playing a crown paladin, who was a noble kingdom guard in his past. I made my character with another player since we both died in the same session. She was the princess of said kingdom. My entire thing was being a protector. So the DM made me the door shield, which I loved, but it was crazy op. It was 2 shields put together for +4 AC, I already had full plate and defense fighting style, and you could use an action to place it into the ground, providing full cover to 2 people behind you. We had a hallway fight once and boy was it easy. We finally got to the beg, and I level 9 saw, rolled last in initiative. We were in a bubble within molten lava, an enlarged Death Slade, and an evil wizard were the enemy. The magical ring we needed to save the world was located on the far end of the chamber. The party attacked and immediately began being overpowered. My turn came, I cast Dimension Door, stepped through into the space where the ring was, grabbed it, and quickened another Dimension Door to get the hell out of there. I asked the DM how far away the entrance to the dungeon was, and we were only 100 feet away but underground. I used Dimension Door to exit the dungeon to where the good wizard was, gave them the ring, and saved the world. It was almost a TPK by my actions, but I saved the world. This isn't as interesting as some things here, but no other DM I've talked to about this said they would have allowed it. My character felt pulled in a direction, but didn't know how far the source was. I faced the pull, turned until it was on my right shoulder, walked 1,000 paces, and then faced the pull again. Using the difference in the direction of the pull, I did some trigonometry and figured out how far away it was. The character had a 14 INT, and while that DM signed off on it, I've been told ever since that it should never have been allowed by most people who have heard the story. At low level, we camped out in a cave that we later discovered was occupied by 2 bears. My druid could speak to animals but had a +0 charisma mod, and I wanted our ascendant dragon monk to do the actual intimidation necessary to let us get away. So, my 7 feet 6 inches Goliath crouched behind her tiny Eladrin, and she effectively tried to lip-sync as I spoke. We rolled just barely well enough to confuse them and buy ourselves time, lol. Also, I threw our halfling at a dragon once, to great effect. Let me set up the defenses on a city siege mission with nearly unlimited resources, 2,000 workers and 2 months of prep time. Coastal city being approached by a massive fuck-off 8,000 strong horde of orcs and dragon-born raiders. First layer of defense was 30 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet, trenches dug in positions similar to how bricks are stacked. With spikes at the bottom, these were covered by the College of Mages with illusion magic. I had 8 mages to command. Next line was 20 ballista, I had them tie gunpowder charges to the front. 15 feet explosive radius, 150 archers manned the walls each with a longbow. 300 infantry manned the murder holes and walls as well. A 1,000-man militia of pikemen was formed from the townspeople. 5 trebuchets were inside the city walls built atop mobile carts to move as needed. The iron gates counterweights were removed and weighed 20 tons. 40 feet from the walls was a trench 30 feet wide and 10 feet deep dug from each shore side of the town. Filled by the sea. During high tide my DM said it flooded the whole battlefield. I pointed out that would make it difficult terrain. He agreed. The final layer of defense was the ships in the harbor who had cannons. All 13 of them were set in a pattern of overlapping fields of fire. The battle took 3 IRL days of play to conclude, with us playing for 18 to 20 hours a day. They got to the walls and pushed ladders atop then, but by this point they had 2,000-ish warriors left. The archers retreated, the soldiers and militia took to the walls with the archers lobbing shots over the wall. They got atop the walls twice but were swiftly cut down. All the trebuchets and cannons were out of ammo. The ships in the harbor were returning with reinforcements after running out of ammo. 490 militia died, 144 soldiers, 98 archers. 2 ships were Sunk by a tamed red dragon. The raiders brought my party went from level 3 to level 11. My character ended the battle with a 1v1 tournament, where 3/6 of my party faced off against 3 of their generals. My party won each fight but barely. My warlord, 4E, went toe-to-toe with the leader for 9 rounds, me gaining the upper hand in the 6th round with me charging him and knocking him prone. Auto-crit with a commander's strike. He got up, grappled me. I won the SDR check through him, and on the 9th round I killed him by beheading him with the rim of my shield as my sword broke in round 7. Some homebrew brawling stuff happened. It was an awesome game. We went on after that to all get rewards and better gear and continued on. The other players had their own jobs they elected for. Our ranger took on scouting out the enemy and leading mounted raids on their forces. Our rogue worked with the local thieves guild to acquire some pirate mercs who helped out from their ships. The wizards were making all of the munitions and stuff. Our fighter made the militia into what they were, basing them on the Macedonian phalanxes. Our DM was super chill and homebrewed a lot of stuff. The enemy had a dragon, some trolls, a bunch of siege weapons and a lot of other stuff I'm forgetting. It was like Helm's Deep, but properly done. It's not as amazing as some of the things I read here, but still here it is. The DM created a homebrew item that is a variant of the deck of many things, but it only holds 2 cards at a time. If you draw from the deck or are convinced to draw from the deck, then the person attuned to it must draw the other card. After that, other 2 cards appear inside the deck. We abused it so much that we eventually exhausted its magic for a while, but the poor guy who was attuned to it went from "Hey, do you want to draw a card?" to "Please no more." This guy went from being extra rich to extremely poor, haunted by a demon, gained 10,000 exp, lost a level and so on. The end of the sessions, which is when we usually drew the cards, were always hilarious since we went from him rolling persuasion on us to us rolling sleight of hand on him. Playing a Spelljammer game, the party was approaching something the DM called Fey Space, which is basically a spot in the astral sea where the Feywild is bleeding through. Our quest demanded we navigate it, but it was disorienting in the extreme. I asked the DM through an NPC if Fey Space was alive in the same way that the Feywild is, like a tiny bit sentient. He said yes. So, I go back up on deck and I insight check the anomaly. High math, somewhere between a 28 to 32. He let me chart a course for the crew by reinterpreting the surface of Fey Space as if it were a face that changes expression. I exclaimed to the other crewmates while gesturing wildly at the little floating planetoids within. It all came together for me when I realized these structures aren't organs, they're thoughts. We were walking across this really big bridge over a dragon's den, being really sneaky like so we don't wake it. And I jokingly attempted to throw a gnome NPC that none of us liked. He was rude to me and racist towards elves, off the bridge as a sacrifice. DM let me roll for it and I got an 18, which allowed me to overpower the lil doofus and haphazardly eat him off the bridge. It did wake the dragon and the DM made us rewind a bit, house rules, so we did not all die instantly. If I could do it again I would. I played a ranger with a heavy crossbow, and I had a magic bolt for it called the aperture bolt that caused the shooter and target to switch places via teleportation. In the midst of a mini-boss battle on an airship, lethally high above the ocean. Ally of mine gets downed by mini-boss, took an extra hit from the boss, and as his final coup de grace the boss chucked my ally's body overboard. Ally's turn, death save crit fail, naturally. DM gives grave look, notes that ally is falling to their doom. He intended them to be fully dead once their body impacted the water. My turn, next. I assumed the DM's look had meant hey, do something or they're permadead L, so naturally I leapt overboard after my falling friend, Uzenf Zephyr Strike further speed boost. I grab them mid-air, and whip around and shoot my aperture bolt, tagging an enemy on the ship with advantage from Zephyr Strike. Which made us teleport swap. I was back on the ship, ally ruled saved, and a random enemy took our place falling into the ocean. I'm not a player, but I can tell you a short story about what allowing a completely safe-looking idea can do to a game. It started exactly from the moment I took a new player. It just so happened that my other players were somewhat smarter in terms of playing Dungeons and Dragons even though they were playing for the third time. Then I allowed many things that players could bring with them from their character history, but allowed the saber pistol, as in Assassin's Creed 4, was a huge mistake. The player tried to play a character that was a pirate using the warrior class. We even attributed the characteristics of the saber and the shooting conditions to the bonus action that he could cut first and then immediately shoot if the saber was loaded. Loading spent a full course, which at that moment I considered not the worst option. As a result, it rolled into a shooter at minimum wages. Until the opponents got close enough for using saber. A little later, I forgot that he could shoot, and when the goblin who was sitting on the arch did not want to give up the key, he was simply shot. It was at that moment just a reminder that we should not forget about characteristics of the players. After that, he wanted to order a copy from the blacksmith, which was also a wake-up call. I forgot at that moment that we recorded the possibility of 50% shoot armor. And it happened that in the end they had to fight with the fallen paladin. His armor class was high and it turned out that this player simply shot him in the end. He was very happy to kill a dangerous opponent with primitive pistols. And I realized that not everything needs to be resolved, and an equal exchange is needed. Years ago, D&D 2nd edition, I had a homebrew quickling, lesser version, the GM let me play, and a bard. Party was given a task to take a ship for our quest. We were given these toothpicks, that when we completed our task, we snap it and return to the tavern. The wizard then gave us each a magic item. I got a Rod of Wonder. So, right out the bat, Sarwajin attacked the ship, I run across the far side, then aim my rod. Cast lightning bolt. Ship catches on fire. Next round, I go, okay, I am going to try to use my Rod of Wonder to see if I can put out the fire. I rolled a fireball. Killed the dwarf party member, ship's sinking. We snapped the toothpicks to return to the tavern. Dwarf was taken to a temple to be raised dead. Wizard comes in, grabs the Rod of Wonder from me, and says, "Here, this should be harmless." Giving me a wand of illusions. Dwarf runs into the tavern, WTF happened. I ran across the room and I shouted, "This fireball," and he died of a heart attack. The wizard also failed his saving throw on the illusion. DM said we found a legendary sword. Before identifying it, he let me say it was a Vorpal sword. 2 weeks later, during then second round of fighting one of the campaign begs at Tarask, I rolled a 20 and cut his head off. He planned 4 hours for the fight, we did it in 20 minutes. Use his friend to turn the beg of the week into our ally, and convinced him and his cult to go fight dragons. In the same session, we made Molotov cocktails and roasted an evil stick monster generating plant that was at the bottom of a well. S'mores were had by all. My current DM. Let me make a hag deal with my wild mage sorcerer to be able to cast as if she were 2 levels higher. I.e. at 5th level, I can cast 4th level spells. Cost was a -2 to my charisma, was at 20, and I roll at disadvantage for surges. When I surge, I roll twice on the table, and he picks the effect. Also, I roll for surges on initiative. I used my bearskin cloak like a parachute to jump down a big hole in a temple. He was new to DMing and I was new to playing but rolled a nat 20. At the time we kind of considered nat 20 an auto success for everything, which in hindsight is kind of dumb, but oh well. If I hadn't created, he said my character was dead.
Hey adventurers and fellow redditors, are you tired of hearing the same old battle music during your D&D sessions or just looking for the perfect soundtrack for your next epic quest? Well, let me introduce you to Amazon Music Unlimited. With Amazon Music Unlimited, you get access to over 100 million songs ad-free. That means whether you need an intense combat playlist, relaxing tunes for a tavern scene, or just something to vibe to while scrolling Reddit, we've got you covered. And it's not just about music, there are thousands of podcasts too. So if you need a break between campaigns, you can catch up on your favorite shows. Plus, there's the best part. If you sign up today, you can try it free for 30 days. No commitment, no hassle, just endless music and podcasts tailored to your taste. So whether you're crafting your next D&D campaign, painting minis, or just chilling with your party, make your soundtrack legendary with Amazon Music Unlimited. Hit the link below and start your free trial now because every adventure needs a killer soundtrack.
We entered area with multiple riddles and fights. First fight was to be hippogriff that flew at us from the sky. There were two bards in the party, chaotic good, and chaotic neutral, me. Good bard wanted to try to feed it with a pear to avoid the fight. I rolled nat 20 and managed to stuff the pear with hallucinogenic mushrooms I randomly had. Griff fell asleep, we covered him with bearskin blanket we had, prepared food for his munchies he would have after waking up and went to sleep. In the morning Griff was cuddled around me and second bard, he became our friend. I named him Gary. My sorcerer has an item that allows me to burn my reaction to store a spell that had just dealt me damage. I tanked an 11th level meteor swarm that dealt radiant and force damage. Dropped it on his mini-boss the next session, which allowed me to loot the hand of Vecna from its ashes. I was able to seduce an enemy we were supposed to kill. DM kept expecting the Olay Hidden Blade routine, and was curious when it didn't happen. I then said I'd like to transform into an insect, crawl up their bumhole, and then transform back. If that doesn't work, I'll just stab them in the chaos. The DM made a very loud fitting noise when describing the feat. The townsfolk called my character Shitsbane after that. Second Ed. 1. We cast the reverse of enlarge on a big pointy rock. 2. We placed said rock just inside the entrance to a cave. 3. Lowered a dragon turtle to stick its head inside the cave. 4. Cancel enlarge spell. 4. DM has us roll to hit. 5. Roll nat 20. 6. Crush dragon turtle's head. 7. Profit. How big are their ears? No, like their ear canals. Could a brown recluse fit? DM staring at me looking mortified at what I had planned. So yeah, slowly killed via poisoning a sleeping cyclops at level 2 that we were supposed to try to avoid. Was playing a game with some randos. The DM was one of those I want gritty realism types, so I played a gritty survivalist rogue sniper. The rest of the team did not play along. They were almost universally lead with your face players. Eventually, the DM sicked a small army of trolls on us, the party of level 3 players. The party wants to run away, except the trolls move faster. The party would fight, but we just got out of a fight where one troll beat us silly. They were chasing us through a heavy woodland area, and I told the party in my best solid snake voice, not great, but gets the point across, just keep going, I think I can slow them down. Because I was a level 3 arcane trickster rogue, and I had minor illusion, the god's gift to the creative sniper. I worked my way into the depths of the forest, cast minor illusion to create a bush, really a bush textured sphere, in the middle of a bunch of other bushes, and waited. The army showed up, but I let the initial wave pass until the leader arrived, and shot at the leader. The DM was confused. There is no way you're going to hit them at that range unless you crit, and that won't kill them. I replied, yes, but I don't need to hit them, I just need the leader to think I wanted to hit them. What followed was an entire army grinding to a halt as the paranoid leader sent them into the woods to find the assassin. I basically waited in my bush, keeping the cantrip maintained. Being trolls, they wouldn't just light the woods on fire to flush me out. They had no casters, something we learned through observation before we got caught and had to flee. They had no reason to expect an illusion, so had no cause to disbelieve in the bush, and the ones who went the nearest failed their checks too. Notice the one bush in a bunch of real bushes that looked unusual. The DM kept asking if I wanted to try to sneak away, and I explained that there was more risk of moving through the woods at night with dark vision using trolls than there was to just sitting still and being patient inside my sniper's nest. Eventually, they'd have to pull back to either continue to chase the now long gone party or return to their now very understaffed fort to defend against whatever they raised an army for in the first place. Worked out, the army was delayed enough for the party to escape, and after the army was recalled I used a series of bush matte painting effects to get out of eyeshot and leave. So, my character had suit of steam-powered armor. It let him go from being a rather physically average artificer to a steel-ensconced nightmare. Everyone loved when my character got to break out the steam armor, it meant we were gonna kick some ass. That isn't the crazy part. The crazy part came when my character, in his armor, was guarding the courtyard of a manor house while the rest of the group stormed inside and went to fight the bad guys on the second floor. My character couldn't make it inside, the armor was too big. That was fine, I was pulling security. But the villains were no pushovers. They got the drop on the rest of the party, and despite a valiant effort, all of my team was down, and the bad guys were getting ready to finish them off. From below, through the doors on the balcony, my character saw this happening, and had to either do something crazy, or skip out and let his friends die. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. I'm going to have to climb the wall to the second floor and go in through the doors on the balcony, I said to the DM. He thought about this for a long moment. You can try, he said. Roll a climb check using your armor's enhanced strength, but you'll be at disadvantage. The roll was good enough. My character hauled 700 pounds of steel plate, turning gears, and a pumping steam engine up the side of a brick wall, over the ledge of the balcony, and right into the enemy's rear arc. The fight ended very quickly after that. I once blew up a building using an explosive substance used by the Beg's army. I had found some residual, so I bottled it in a potion bottle. A necromancer had disguised himself as a commander and then used the fear spell, scaring away the rest of the party except me. After some banter back and forth, he raised 9 dead guards and said, "Your move." I then grabbed said bottle, chucked it at the lit brazier near him, and ducked out the door. The entire building exploded. I succeeded a dex save and was blown away with minor damage. After the fire died down, we investigated the building and found 9 charred corpses and a pile of ash where the necromancer stood, his amulet left behind. And that's how I one-shot the Beg at level 3 in my 3rd session ever. My com-druid turned into a seagull, flew to the BBG's pirate ship and landed in the crow's nest. Back to druid, cast summon fire elemental, told it to go into the powder hold of the ship, then back to a seagull and took off. Absolute mayhem, and my DM just took it on the chin and laughed so hard as his boss and all the followers were blown up. We were in the astral plane, and the module being run had a description of a creepy garden as having strange bird-like creatures in the background that were about the size of hummingbirds. They were considered an environmental hazard as they swarmed and drank blood. Only 1 horsepower each, but swarms made them rather deadly. I know avian. So I asked my GM if I could talk to one as they were described as birds. He said sure. I liked the little spokesbird, so asked if he wanted to join me on my adventures. GM decided to let a reaction roll decide, and roll a 100. I now have a little blood-drinking astral hummingbird buddy. We call him a humming sturge. We were exploring a temple of an elder elemental. We killed the cultist that ran the place and freed an elf that was going to be sacrificed to it. She has seen the ritual and she tells us how it's performed. She overheard the cultist and said that this elder elemental can grant whatever you want. So we performed the ritual but didn't know it needed sacrifices. DM rolled randomly, and the elemental took the elf as a sacrifice and granted us our deepest desires. One of the players wished for her book to be known worldwide, another character wished for a mode of transportation that would never tire cause he hated walking and riding horses, and my character coveted godhood and he was granted the hero tier of godhood. We were level 15 at the time. Fought a giant mechanical leviathan. It was using peekaboo tactics utilizing legendary actions to dive out of sight. Pissed off, I flash froze it inside its lair's pool with cone of cold. The spell doesn't work that way. Right? Previous editions mentioned Fireball could melt coins and still can ignite flammable objects in 5e. If 8d6 can melt gold, surely it can freeze water, especially with a larger area blast. It even calls out freezing a creature if it dies. Place it. I fly above the middle, 40 feet up, and shoot it straight down. How long does an iceberg take to melt in an underground insulated cavern? Story takes place back in 3.5, back when you had to roll to confirm crits. Group in a dungeon and we're getting absolutely wrecked by assassins. Room in the dungeon looks like Moria, a large room filled with columns, which they're using to hide from us and attack while staying out of our light. Spellcasters went down quickly, but managed to take one of them down. The other is keeping just out of range for us melee to do much more than chip away at him. So we start tossing torches and light spelled stones around us to try and light the further areas up while pouring healing potions down the throats of the casters. It's a simple strength roll to see how far you toss an item. And I have an idea where he's going to pop out next, so I hold action till he fires an arrow and throw my torch. Nat 20. Okay, you toss it a good distance, but just for shits and giggles, because you are throwing it at him. Roll again. He watches me roll. Nat 20. One more time. Getting up out of his chair to stand over me as I roll. Nat 20. You throw the torch with such force of frustration that you impale the end of it into the assassin, killing him. Apparently they were supposed to capture us for the storyline to continue. Not strictly 5e but Pathfinder. I joined the campaign late, DM brought me in at level 3 with triple cap gain while the others were level 7. I was playing a Stargazer Oracle. While exploring the Beg's Tower there wasn't much I could do, but I built my character around support spells and a couple of very low chance but very nasty spells, blindness deafness for one, but the star of this post is Murderous Command. There were a few cases where I used it to stop something killing me or one of us by making them punch their friend instead, but the highlight is this one. Heard some sounds from the next room. I looked through the keyhole and DM described to me basically two mangy and murderous looking ostriches, which seeing through the keyhole, I had extremely high perception I cast Murderous Command. For those unfamiliar, Murderous Command gives the target a mental urge to kill its nearest ally, which it will obey to the best of its ability. It is a level 1 spell, lasts 2 rounds and has a willpower saving throw. Well, these birds were dumb, so this was a gimme. He described to me seeing one its lunge at the other, then to everyone hearing a fight, screeching and blood spraying, followed by a loud thud. My party members were puzzled, and found when we walked through the door, feathers everywhere, blood sprayed on the walls and patches of skin laying about. There was a hole in the floor that lead to lower floors in this tower. I think it was a 5-story drop. The birds had both fallen off to their death to a lab below. He showed us the birds' stat blocks after. They were really tough, but dumb as a bag of rocks, so one hit the other with its full force as per the spell, the other retaliated in kind, and it snowballed from there. That one will stick with me. In the same campaign, our conjured class, can't remember the exact build, went invisible, teleported to the rafters, then summoned 10 oxen, and trampled the beg in a single round off. Did around 270, same with no cries. DM was sad laughing after that encounter as it got cheesed so hard. He still brings IP both instances. My party ran into a dire boar after fighting a horde of goblins. It charged us and took out our sorcerer and almost downed our cleric. It then changed course and charged my half-orc barbarian, who had a folk hero background, animal handling proficiency and a high strength score. So I asked if I could try to stop the boar mid-charge by grabbing the tusks and trying to tame it. Natural 20. My DM later told me that it would have gored me even if I rolled 19 and added bonuses. It became my mount, and I made money in downtime between sessions by saying he was a taxi service in the local village. I tricked an ice devil with a horned devil helmet into giving me one of his ice spears, then telling him to go find the enemies somewhere else. He was hunting our party. The DM then let me fuse the ice devil spear with my warlock blade, where I could use an action, or bonus action, I forget, to alternate between the two forms. Although I could only wield the ice spear with no disadvantages in my otherworldly guise devil form. The craziest thing that my DM allowed was Spelljammer. My character, Warlock Fighter, was in the crow's nest of our living ship when an enemy ship came in for combat. From the crow's nest I jump off with a successful acrobatic roll into a Tarzan swing with one of the tied mast ropes into an attack where I made an attack against their captain with disadvantage to knock him off our ship into space. One time in the middle of one of our end boss fights I was about to fall to my death, and I asked if I could use the blink spell so I can shift to a different plane and move 5 feet, and stop from falling to my death, and my DM asked what using the blink spell would do, and I told him I would move me 5 feet so I wouldn't die. He told me that I was wrong and the spell didn't let me move, so I looked it up and he was wrong, and so I'm pretty sure he only let me do it because I knew the rule, and he was getting sick of people not knowing the rules of their spells in the campaign. Rolled a nat 20 to control an orb of annihilation. My Warforged bard had low INT and Whis, so he wasn't the most responsible one, and that's how I played him. The party knew this and feared for their lives. But after, as a player, that amount of power scared me so much I forfeited the control of the orb after evaporating some houses and roads. DM exactly knew how it would play out. I still think back to how handy it would have been to fight those green dragons we encountered later. Ah well, nobody remembers an orb of annihilation anyway. Roll a bale of explosive powder down a town hill while running on it like in old cartoons, with an extremely high acrobatics check, have it hit a pole that sent it flying high into sky after I jumped off, and then the wizard hit it with a firebolt, exploding it just before it hit a pirate ship coming into a harbor. I was playing a rune knight and was trying to peel a monster off a party member, but there was a gap between us I couldn't cross, and I ran out of ranged options. However, I was proficient with improvised weapons and just so happened to have our small-sized flying monk within arm's reach. As I was a large creature, I asked the DM if I could use our monk as an improvised ranged weapon, and they said sure. So that's the short story of how I used Fairy as a throwing hammer to kill a bullet, saving the squishy wizard who'd gotten separated from us. My barbarian, ironically, hates actual death, but has a "you be surprised what you can live through" motto, leapt off of a balcony towards the hovering beg and grappled him, Barb's specialty, and dragged him with him down to the ground into kinda a Zangief piledriver. It was a badass moment that absolutely could have went sideways. And the rest of the party got to go ham on the baddie after it too, a fair amount of fall damage. Path of the Totem, there, so the fall damage was halved for him as well. Due to the shenanigans of multiple things, I was allowed to kill a Demolic by suffocating it in a bag of holding. A Demolic's stat block doesn't say that it doesn't need to breathe, and it doesn't have hands to open the bag, so it can't make an athletics check to try and open the bag, so after 10 minutes or so, it suffocated and dies. Why I was able to do this, as a wizard proficient in athletics, I don't know, but I just went with it. Over the course of a few sessions, my DM allowed me to craft a god-tier bow. At the time, my character was a level 13 elf eldritch knight for context. The bow was named Equilibrium's Spite and adorned carvings depicting the balance between good and evil. Other than having unlimited magic arrows that could cause my choice of necrotic or radiant damage, twice a day I could unleash its special attack. This consisted of rolling a d20 plus my character level to determine how many arrows would appear around me in a single turn of combat, and attack any enemies I determined. I ran a short campaign a couple of months after with the same group. Unknown to the players, it was my elf's origin story and tied into the campaign. To make a long story short, my character is actually a god and doesn't know it. DM's mind was blown and accepted it into his campaign. Lol, still one of my favorite moments. Playing D&D. I let my paladin roll to seduce the dragon. She then took the dragon out on several dates, turned into a committed relationship, married, dragon converted to her faith, they had 2 half-dragon half-tiefling children, and I tried to fade out to black. But she wanted to roll all the grappling checks. Charisma? Intelligence? All of them. 4 months of hunting this dragon, and it ended in a seaside cottage in the paladin's hometown. My party was in a kind of difficult boss fight, and as a joke on my turn, I said I was going to magically make a cage made from a special stone the boss was weak to fall from the sky and trap him. Our DM probably assumed nothing would happen if he let me roll for it, so I did. I got a crit.
Hey there, fantasy fans. If you're looking for an epic listen, you have to check out Rosamund Pike's narration of the Wheel of Time audiobook. Rosamund Pike brings so much life to Robert Jordan's world. Her performance adds an extra layer of depth to the characters, making the story even more immersive. Whether it's her portrayal of the fearless Aes Sedai or the intense magical battles, she nails it. It's like experiencing the Wheel of Time in a whole new way. And here's the best part. You can get it for free with Audible's 30-day trial of Audible Plus. You'll get access to this incredible audiobook and more, completely free for a month. So if you're ready to dive into this massive fantasy world, this is the perfect way to start. Don't miss out. Check the link below and start your journey today. 100% free for qualifying people. Completely free. Click the link.